I'm going to share what happened to me 3 years ago. What I witnessed still makes my blood run cold, and I nearly lost my son because I waited too long to act. You have to believe me when I tell you this. The champagne glass slipped from my hand and shattered on the restaurant floor. Everyone turned to look, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the document on my phone. My son David sat across from me, his new wife Jennifer beside him, both frozen mid-laugh. The maitre d' rushed over with a napkin, but I barely noticed. I had just discovered that my daughter-in-law had buried 3 husbands before she turned 32. Let me back up. 6 months earlier, I was standing in the back of Holy Rosary Cathedral in Vancouver, watching my only son marry a woman I'd met exactly 4 times. David was 38, successful, and had been single for 3 years after a difficult divorce. When he called me that spring, his voice had that breathless quality I hadn't heard since he was a teenager. "Dad, I've met someone. She's incredible." Jennifer Whitmore appeared in our lives like a spring thaw, warm, charming, with a laugh that seemed to melt everyone around her. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep, she told us, traveled frequently, had moved to Vancouver from Calgary after a difficult period in her life. Her parents had passed away when she was young, raised by an aunt who'd recently died. No siblings, no close family. "She's been through so much," David said during one of our weekly phone calls. "She deserves happiness, Dad, and I want to give her that." Something about her story felt rehearsed, but I pushed the feeling down. I was 63 years old, living alone in my Point Grey house, since my wife Catherine passed away 4 years earlier. Who was I to judge my son's happiness? Maybe I was just being an overprotective father, unable to let go. The wedding was small. Jennifer had no guests on her side, which she explained away with her orphan status and frequent moves for work. My sister Helen attended, along with a handful of David's friends and colleagues. Jennifer wore a simple ivory dress and cried during her vows. David looked at her like she'd hung the moon. At the reception, I watched her work the room. She had this way of touching people's arms when she spoke to them, leaning in like they were sharing secrets. My sister pulled me aside near the bar. "There's something off about her," Helen whispered. "You're being paranoid," I said, but my stomach churned. They honeymooned in Tofino for a week. When they returned, Jennifer moved into David's Kitsilano condo. Within a month, she'd convinced him to update his will. Within 2 months, she'd taken out a life insurance policy on him. $2 million. David mentioned this casually over dinner at their place. "Jennifer thinks it's responsible," he said, serving the roasted chicken she'd prepared. "Given her family history of early deaths, she wants to make sure I'm protected too." "That's quite a lot of coverage," I said carefully. Jennifer smiled at me from across the table. "David's worked so hard to build his software company. If anything happened to him, I'd want to ensure his legacy continued. Plus, the premiums are reasonable at his age." She was right. It was sensible. So why did it feel wrong? The first real warning came on a Tuesday evening in October. I'd stopped by their condo to drop off some of Catherine's old cookbooks that David wanted. Jennifer wasn't home yet. David made us coffee, and we sat in their living room, overlooking English Bay. "She's been encouraging me to take up cycling," he said. "Says I need more exercise. She got me this incredible bike, professional grade. We're planning to do the Sea to Sky Highway next month." "Since when do you cycle?" I asked. David had always preferred hiking. "Since Jennifer thinks it would be good for my heart health," he laughed. "She's always thinking about my well-being, Dad. I'm lucky." I looked at my son, really looked at him. He'd lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes. "Are you sleeping okay?" "Jennifer makes me this special tea before bed. Helps with stress." He rubbed his temple. "Work's been intense lately, but she takes such good care of me." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something Catherine used to say kept echoing in my mind. "Trust your gut, James. It's survived longer than your logic." The next morning, I did something I'm not proud of. I hired a private investigator. His name was Robert Chen, a former RCMP detective who now ran a small firm in downtown Vancouver. I sat in his modest office, feeling foolish. "I think I'm being paranoid," I started. "Tell me anyway," he said. I explained about Jennifer. The rapid marriage, the life insurance, the way she had no past, no family, no friends from before David. Robert didn't laugh. He pulled out a notepad. What's her full name? Birth date, if you know it? Jennifer Marie Whitmore. She said she's 32, so born around 1991, I think. She mentioned growing up in Calgary. He wrote it down. I'll start with the basics. Birth records, marriage records, employment history. Give me a week. 5 days later, Robert called me. His voice was tight. We need to meet. In person. Now. I drove to his office through an autumn rainstorm. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Robert had a file spread across his desk when I arrived. Jennifer Marie Whitmore doesn't exist, he said without preamble. Not born in Calgary in 1991. Not anywhere in Canada, actually. What? But I found something interesting. He slid a photograph across the desk. It showed a woman who looked exactly like Jennifer, but with dark hair instead of blonde. This is Jessica Manning. Born in Regina in 1989. Married a dentist named Thomas Manning in Edmonton in 2015. He died 6 months later. Heart attack. She inherited everything. My mouth went dry. Robert slid another photo. Same woman, different hair color again. This is Jennifer Keller. Married a lawyer named David Keller in Calgary in 2017. He died 8 months later. Fell off a mountain during a hiking trip. She inherited his estate, about $1.3 million. A third photo. And this is Marie Whitmore. Married an accountant named Stephen Whitmore in Kelowna in 2019. He died after 7 months. Cycling accident on Highway 97. She collected his life insurance, $1.8 million. The room spun. My son's name is David. I noticed that pattern too, Robert said quietly. She seems to prefer men named David or Thomas. Successful professionals, between 35 and 45. Recently divorced or widowed. No children or children who are grown and distant. That's David exactly, I whispered. He fits perfectly. Robert pulled out more documents. I contacted colleagues in those cities. The deaths were all investigated, ruled accidental or natural causes. But look at the timeline. She marries, updates their wills, takes out life insurance, and within a year, they're dead. Then she disappears, resurfaces in a new city with a new name, new hair color. The only constant is her face and her pattern. I stared at the photographs. My daughter-in-law smiled up at me from 3 different lives. She's killed 3 men, I said. Allegedly, Robert corrected. We have no proof that would stand up in court. The police investigated each death and found no foul play. She's careful, very careful. What about fingerprints? DNA? She'd need to be in the system for that to help. And clearly, she's never been caught. I drove home in a daze. My son was married to a serial killer. She'd already convinced him to update his will, already taken out a $2 million policy on his life, already had him cycling, which is how she'd killed husband number 3. I pulled over on Marine Drive and called David. Hey Dad, what's up? I need you to come to my house, tonight, without Jennifer. Is everything okay? You sound strange. Please, son, it's important. 2 hours later, David sat in my living room, looking concerned. I'd printed out everything Robert gave me, the photographs, the obituaries, the timeline. Dad, what's going on? I handed him the file. Your wife isn't who she says she is. He looked at the first photo. His face went white. Where did you get this? I hired an investigator. David, Jennifer has been married 3 times before. All 3 husbands died within a year. All 3 deaths looked like accidents. All 3 left her substantial money. David's hands trembled as he flipped through the documents. He stopped at the photo of Jennifer as Marie Whitmore. This can't be real. Stephen Whitmore died in a cycling accident. In Kelowna, 2 years ago, she married him as Marie Whitmore. Jennifer's from Calgary. She's never been to Kelowna. She's never been Jennifer Whitmore either. That name doesn't exist in any birth records in Canada. She's using a false identity, son. David stood up, pacing. No, there has to be an explanation. These are just women who look like her. Coincidence. 3 women with the same face, who all married men and became widows within a year. David, she has you cycling. She's made you tea every night since the wedding. She convinced you to take out a massive life insurance policy with her as beneficiary. Lots of couples have life insurance. Did she suggest it, or did you? He stopped pacing. His face crumbled. She brought it up, said it was responsible. Just like she brought up the cycling. Just like she makes your tea. David, when's the last time you felt truly well? I've been tired lately, he admitted. Jennifer says it's stress from work. Or she's been slowly poisoning you, building up to something that will look natural when you finally collapse. David sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. This can't be happening. I love her, Dad. She loves me. She loved Thomas Manning too, and David Keller, and Stephen Whitmore, until she killed them. We sat in silence. Rain hammered against the windows. Finally, David looked up, his eyes red. What do I do? That was when I realized I had no idea. We had evidence of her pattern, but no proof of murder. The police in 3 different cities had investigated and found nothing. If we confronted her, she'd disappear and resurface somewhere else with another man, another David, another death. But if we did nothing, my son would die. We need more evidence, I said. Something concrete that proves she's poisoning you or planning an accident. Something that will make the police take this seriously. How do I act normal around her knowing this? You have to, I said firmly. If she suspects you know, she'll either run or accelerate her timeline. We need to catch her in the act. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Jennifer's smile, the way she'd touched my arm at the wedding, called me Dad. She was a psychopath, and she was living with my son. The next morning, Robert and I met again. We need to document everything, he said. David's health, his routine, anything suspicious Jennifer does. Keep a detailed journal with dates and times. If possible, get samples of anything she gives him to consume. You mean the tea, I said. Especially the tea. If she's poisoning him, that's likely her delivery method. But be careful. She's gotten away with this 3 times. She's intelligent and patient. David started secretly recording his daily symptoms. Headaches, dizziness, nausea, fatigue, all things that could be stress. But the timing was suspicious. They always worsened after drinking Jennifer's special tea. I visited their condo more often, playing the doting father-in-law. Jennifer seemed pleased by the attention. She'd show me her cooking, her decorating choices, always with David's arm around her waist. I'm so glad you're becoming close, David told me one evening when Jennifer was in the kitchen. His voice was hollow. He was losing weight rapidly now. 3 weeks into our investigation, Jennifer announced they were planning a cycling trip to Whistler. We'll take the Sea to Sky Highway, she said brightly, over Sunday dinner at my house. David's been training so hard. Haven't you, honey? David forced a smile. Yeah, it should be great. After Jennifer excused herself to use the washroom, David grabbed my wrist. Dad, Stephen Whitmore died on a highway cycling trip. I know. She's going to kill me on that road. Then we need to act before you go. When's the trip? 2 weeks. We had 14 days to catch a serial killer. Robert suggested we install hidden cameras in David's condo. It was illegal without Jennifer's consent. But David owned the property. He positioned them carefully. Living room, kitchen, bedroom, all disguised as everyday objects. Then we waited. For the first week, nothing. Jennifer cooked healthy meals, made David his nightly tea, kissed him goodbye each morning. The perfect wife. But on day 9, David was working late at his office. I was at my house, monitoring the camera feeds on my laptop. Jennifer came home at 6, carrying grocery bags. She made herself dinner, ate alone, cleaned up. Then, around 8 p.m., she went to the bedroom closet. She pulled out a locked box from the top shelf. My heart hammered as she opened it with a key she wore on a necklace. Inside were pill bottles, lots of them. She selected one, went to the kitchen, and began brewing tea. She added honey, lemon, and then carefully crushed 2 pills into David's cup. She stirred it thoroughly, ensuring they dissolved completely. I grabbed my phone and called Robert. She's poisoning his tea. Right now. I'm watching it happen. Don't confront her yet, he warned. We need to know what those pills are. Can you get a sample? David came home at 9. Jennifer greeted him with a kiss and the poisoned tea. I watched through the camera as my son pretended to drink it, actually pouring most of it into a plant when Jennifer turned away. He'd been doing this for days now, which is why he'd started to feel better. The next afternoon, while Jennifer was at work, David and I entered the condo. I photographed everything in that locked box: pill bottles with the labels removed, syringes, a detailed notebook with dates and dosages, and a life insurance policy document, David's signature forged at the bottom, increasing his coverage to $4 million. She forged your signature, I said, photographing the document. David's face was pale. I never signed that. The policy I agreed to was $2 million. The notebook was the most damning evidence. Jennifer had documented everything: different poisons she'd used on previous husbands, digitalis from foxglove plants for Thomas Manning, causing his heart attack, antifreeze and protein shakes for David Keller, weakening him before the accidental fall. And for Stephen Whitmore, she'd loosened his bicycle brakes and given him blood thinners, ensuring the crash would be fatal. For my son, she'd been using a combination approach: low doses of digoxin in his tea to cause fatigue and heart palpitations. The plan, according to her notes, was to stage a cycling accident on the Sea to Sky Highway during their upcoming trip. His underlying heart condition would make the death seem natural, even if he survived the initial crash. She's been planning this for months, David whispered, reading her clinical notes. Before we even got married. I photographed every page. Then we carefully returned everything exactly as we'd found it. That night, I called Robert with all the evidence. He contacted a colleague at the Vancouver Police Department's Major Crimes Unit. Detective Sarah Morrison listened to our story, reviewed our evidence, and made a decision. We're going to arrest her tomorrow, she said. We have enough to charge her with attempted murder of your son, and will coordinate with RCMP to investigate the deaths of her previous husbands. What should David do? I asked. Act normal. One more night. Can you do that? David could. Barely. He came home that evening to find Jennifer cooking dinner. She'd made his favorite meal, salmon with roasted vegetables. She served him tea afterwards. I've been thinking about our cycling trip, she said, sitting beside him on the couch. Maybe we should go this weekend instead of waiting 2 more weeks. The weather's supposed to be perfect. Sure, David said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Whatever you want. She kissed his cheek. You're so good to me. I'm the luckiest woman in the world. The next morning, Detective Morrison and 3 other officers knocked on the condo door at 7 a.m. I was watching from my car down the street. Jennifer answered in her bathrobe, all confused innocence. Jennifer Whitmore? Or should I say Jessica Manning? Or perhaps you prefer Marie Whitmore? They arrested her, right there in the doorway. David stood behind her, silent. She turned to look at him, and for just a moment her mask slipped. The warmth vanished from her eyes. What remained was cold calculation. You couldn't just die like you were supposed to, she said flatly. Then they took her away. The investigation that followed was extensive. Police in Edmonton, Calgary, and Kelowna reopened the cases of her previous husbands. They exhumed Thomas Manning's body and found traces of digitalis poisoning that had been missed during the initial autopsy. David Keller's fall was re-examined, and his sister came forward with suspicions she'd had at the time. Stephen Whitmore's bicycle was recovered from an evidence locker, and sure enough, the brake line showed signs of tampering. Jennifer, or Jessica, or Marie, or whatever her real name was. She never talked, never explained why, never showed remorse. The forensic psychiatrist who evaluated her diagnosed her as a psychopath with narcissistic traits. She saw men as resources to be exploited and eliminated once they'd served their purpose. She was ultimately convicted of 1 count of first-degree murder for Thomas Manning, 2 counts of second-degree murder for David Keller and Stephen Whitmore, and 1 count of attempted murder for my son David. She received 3 concurrent life sentences with no possibility of parole for 25 years. David went through months of therapy. The betrayal of someone he'd loved, someone he'd trusted completely, damaged him in ways I couldn't fix with just fatherly support. He sold the Kitsilano condo, unable to live where she'd systematically poisoned him. He moved back home with me for 6 months while he recovered, both physically and emotionally. The toxicology reports showed he'd been ingesting digoxin for months, another few weeks, and his heart would have given out. The doctors said if he'd actually drunk the tea every night as she'd intended, he might have died before we caught her. We later learned her real name was Jennifer Sarah Morrison, born in Medicine Hat in 1986. She'd started young, killing a boyfriend in high school and making it look like suicide. She'd refined her technique over the years, moving from city to city, changing her appearance and identity each time. The case made national news. Black widow killer caught in Vancouver. Other families came forward with suspicions about lost loved ones. She may have killed as many as 7 men before we stopped her. It's been 3 years now. David's rebuilt his life. He's dating again, though he's cautious in a way he never was before. He double-checks everything. Questions, motives. It breaks my heart that she stole his ability to trust freely. But he's alive. We have dinner every Sunday at my house. Sometimes Helen joins us. We talk about work, about hockey, about anything except her. David started a foundation in memory of Thomas, David, and Stephen. It helps families who've lost loved ones to domestic violence and provides education about the warning signs of predatory relationships. I keep the file, Robert Chen, compiled in my study. Sometimes I look at those photographs of Jennifer's different identities and I think about how close we came, how easily she charmed us all, how I almost dismissed my instincts because I wanted my son to be happy. The lesson I learned, the one I want to share with anyone listening to this story, is simple but crucial. Trust your gut. When something feels wrong, it usually is. When someone's past is too clean, too sad, too convenient to verify, dig deeper. When someone isolates their partner from family, controls their health, pushes for life insurance, and will changes immediately after marriage, pay attention. My son is alive because I listened to that small voice of doubt. Because I acted on my suspicions instead of dismissing them as paranoia. Because when I found evidence of danger, I didn't confront it alone. I got professional help. I documented everything. I built a case. You don't owe anyone the benefit of the doubt when your loved one's life is at stake. Jennifer Morrison sits in a maximum security prison in the Fraser Valley. She'll be 72 before she's even eligible for parole. My son is 41 now, healthy, slowly learning to trust again. And me? I'm 66, grateful for every Sunday dinner, every phone call, every moment I get with my son, because I almost lost him. And I'm never making the mistake of ignoring my instincts again. Choose the people who choose you. Protect the ones you love. And never, ever ignore the warning signs. No matter how perfect someone seems. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Have you ever had a moment when your instincts told you something was wrong, but you ignored it? I hope you never have to learn this lesson the way I did. But if something feels off, if someone in your family seems to be in danger, trust yourself. Act. Because sometimes you're the only thing standing between them and disaster. I was. And I'm grateful every day that I didn't look away.